back to Highlander Heart. It's been a while since we've been on your screens. To be honest, there hasn't really been much for us to talk about, no new products for us to go over. So I thought we'd try something maybe a little bit different. This time around, we're going to be bringing you kind of a show where we're going to talk about lots of different aspects of Highlander with some esteemed Highlander fan colleagues. I can't do this on my own. So joining me along the journey are going to be two other people. Number one, can't do this without a Scotsman. Robert McGregor, how are you?
Hi, I'm great, I'm fine. You can see I'm doing well.
You do very well. You're flying all the flags there. You've got the sword in the background and everything. And the
orange sword, you know.
Yeah. It's very important to have important bookshelves. Oh, and the Glenmorangie. Look at that. Beautiful. Lovely. So for those of you who don't know, I mean, Rob and I have known each other almost 25 years now. We met at a convention in Denver in 96.
10 years ago.
Yeah, I got it right. And that, I think it was maybe that first night that we wound up chatting to another gentleman of American origin who invited us up to his room to have a little bit of whiskey. And I'm delighted that we've got him with us. So welcome, Joe Dilworth. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me along. This is really awesome. As you can see, I'm not at home. I'm vacationing in the Highlands. So
yeah, absolutely. And I'm absolutely in New York, as you can see as well. You know, of course, that's exactly where I am.
Yes.
So Joe, I mean, obviously you've been a Highlander fan for a long time, as we know, but also we also share a little bit of sort of journalistic kind of background as well.
Yeah, I think much like everyone here, I've been a Highlander fan since the beginning, since the theatrical release of the first film. And then it's just kind of grown from there. But yeah, for about 8 years, I ran the never known website, Pop Culture Zoo. And it was only for 8 years because not a lot of people heard of it. But, much like you, I prided myself on doing news and reviews and interviews about various pop culture things. Maybe at some point, I think I'm actually on the Facebook page, I pointed to the interview I did at Comic-Con a few years ago with Mr. Adrian Paul.
Yeah.
So, and that's also kind of that whole website and everything is kind of how I met and befriended our guest for this episode. So give you a little segue there.
Thank you. Well, absolutely. Every episode, I guess this is, we are going to have a guest. And somebody we can tie into the subject. Now today's subject is going to be the reboot. I mean, it just seemed like the most sensible thing for us to cover the first episode. It's very current. There's amazingly still things happening with that. So we had to bring on the wonderful author of this little tome here, Fearful Symmetry. There you go. Thanks, Rob. Mr. John Mosby. Hello, John.
I forgot my copy. I should have done that. I've got it scattered around here. One of the rare unautographed copies is flying around here somewhere. How are you all doing?
Unautographed.
Oh, you haven't got your... I thought they came autographed whether you wanted it or not.
Yeah, that was it. Sorry. How are you all doing, gentlemen?
I'm doing good, fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
very well.
Yeah, they're good. How are you?
Not so bad. As you can see, I'm not at home either. I'm actually in Gallifrey at the moment.
Nice.
So the magic of green screen. But yeah, I think we're all dealing with quarantine in our own special way.
Yeah, basically. But this is one of the nice things. I think I don't know whether I would necessarily have thought of the idea of doing something like this were it not for seeing similar things sort of happening in quarantine, in particular the amazing Highlander one that you did.
All down. I have people been sort of said, "Oh, well done." That was all down to Kareem at Davis Panzer, whose sterling efforts are doing us all proud. I think it's he asked me to do that. It was a pleasure to do it. It's always good, as is today. It's a great opportunity to sort of meet up with old friends and sort of shoot the breeze at a time when we're all going a little stir crazy. It's nice to sort of remind yourself there is life outside the door at the moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, exactly. And we are literally spanning, well, the great divide, UK and US right here. So it's awesome. It's very cool to have you all here. I'm so excited. So as I said, yeah, we kind of thought we'd sort of hit the ground running with the reboot. I mean, for those, I'm sure everybody knows the long and tortured story of the Highlander reboot. I think probably it started mostly 2008, 2009 with the Markham and Holloway script that came into the news around about then. And from then, we sort of got a sort of bank of directors that sort of just sort of popped in and then popped out just as quickly, from Justin Lin, sort of Fast and Furious guy, to Juan Carlos Fresnadillo from 28 Weeks Later and Children of Men. And then Cedric Nicholas Troyan, the director of Huntsman and Winter's War, as well as a few actors as well, which was, blindsided by Ryan Reynolds, who seemed to disappear just as quickly as Justin Lin did. And then does anybody else remember the weird Tom Cruise rumor?
Way back.
Tried not to.
Yeah, I think I remember that a little bit.
I think he's one of those people that actually sort of said, I'm interested, and people said, oh, he's interested, and then people got very excited. But I have a feeling that happens probably quite a lot with Tom Cruise. I don't think he would have been awful. It would have been a very different mainstream thing, but I could certainly think of people worse to do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think the accent would still have been very awful.
Though, I think they could have gone the route of having him like as Ramirez and not necessarily McLeod. Because he does very good at, I mean, let's face it, in a lot of things that Tom Cruise does, he's Tom Cruise, but he is also very good at playing very unique and weird character bits. So that might have been a way to go. Yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely. And we'll get, I think later on we'll have a shot at casting our, like, as we would want to cast the reboot, because that'll be kind of interesting. So yeah, more recently, I mean, so now we've got Chad Stahelski on board, which is, I think, possibly the most exciting thing that's happened to the reboot in all of this time. He's a very exciting kind of name in Hollywood at the moment with the John Wick series. And I think more than that, he seems a very impassioned Highlander fan, which I think is literally the most important thing. So more recently, he said, we're in heavy development mode on Highlander, tweaking the scripts, writing, conceptualizing sequences, of how we're going to do everything. We probably have a lot more in-person kind of things, but it hasn't slowed down our development process at all. So I guess what he's saying is that, they've got a lot of stuff going on, basically. Another John Wick, they've been doing The Matrix, all of which has kind of slowed down the kind of forward momentum of the reboot. But yeah, what do we all think about Chad? Let's go with John first, because John's our guest. Sorry, I need to get around how we do this on Team, so we don't all talk about
like that. Yeah, I mean, I think they've got a good track record. The one thing about Highlander, and I think this is probably something we'll end up coming back to time and time again, is there's so many different cogs in that wheel. There's the action format, the physical sword play, the romantic side, the historical side, and I can think of lots of directors that I think are good at one or two of those and would excel at one of those elements. And the question is, then can they bring everything in together? Yeah. I think he could. I mean, as you say, it's hugely important in some regards that he knows the franchise. He's going to effectively reboot it. He can pick and choose. He can get rid of just about any element if it's his choice. But to have somebody who knows what has worked in the past and what exists in the past, I think gives him a big sort of smorgasbord to actually pick from. And he's certainly one of the directors I think that has impressed me with in interviews when he's rather than just pay lip service to something. Yeah, it's time traveling to mortals, and that you go, oh god, the guy doesn't know anything. He knows some of the nuances of the series. He was talking about the Watchers. He was talking about Mythos at one point in an interview. So you're going, okay, he knows his stuff. He likes it, and he's in a position to make it. So as far as I'm concerned, go to it.
Yeah. No, absolutely, I agree. Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, exactly the same as John. I love the John Wick movies and what he's building with those. And I'm thoroughly excited to see a fan do something with it that knows the franchise, that knows what's going on. Yeah. My concern is that somebody out with his control will try and ruin it to some degree. I'm excited, but I'm very apprehensive.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe?
I'm actually excited by it for a lot of the reasons as to what John was saying, but yeah, I'm a huge fan of the John Wick movies, and stylistically, I think he could pull it off well. I mean, he's proven he can direct a tortured soul who's haunted by his past, which kind of epitomizes Connor, if that's how they go in the present day. Again, it's going to probably come down to the script, but I'm definitely encouraged that it sounds like he's kind of in control of the story, kind of in control of where the script goes. As John pointed out, he seems to be a huge fan. What I did like in some of it, I think about a month or so ago in one of his interviews, he was talking about that he realized trying to do a story in like this in a minute or an hour and 45-minute movie is kind of unrealistic. So I don't know if they're planning like a mini series. I think a streaming mini series on like HBO or Stars would be fantastic. Or if they're looking at this as a trilogy of movies, but at least he's cognizant of the fact that you can't have, if you want to go somewhere with this and the story wants you to, you can't have Connor win the prize in the first movie, right? So
no. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm very, very encouraged. I think if he's had any control over who he's picked as actors for the John Wick movies, that he's a good person to be in control, and I think he can do good things with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree. And I think the interesting thing that I sort of pick out of his most recent quotes is about the conceptualized sequences. That's what John Wick does very well. Sort of picking these big set pieces that really stand out. But as you know, I think a lot of us have also said that it's potentially, like I think Rob definitely picked out, it's potentially a worry that could be the overriding thing, and be oversized and sort of forget the other kind of the romantic angle and this kind of thing too. But at the same time, I suppose when you look back at Russell Mulcahy's original, there was a very stylized director. There was a director who, as some reviews said at the time, had made a 2-hour music video. So, in some degrees, I think he's potentially the best successor to sort of come on board. It's exciting.
Want somebody who knows what they're doing, and I mean that's the thing. Not every existing Highlander fan is going to like the result. It could be fantastically, brilliantly well executed, and there'll still be some of us who will turn around and go, "Nah, the original was better," and that's always going to happen. That's always going to happen. I think any director coming on board, so I don't mind as long as it's a good movie. It can be a very different movie in some ways. I think it have to be, but it's but as long as it's made by somebody who knows. Who, however they do it, as long as they do it well, is always my thing. It might not be for me. It might be for a younger generation. I don't know. Yeah, it's difficult, but it's the things I've liked and things I've disliked on TV and film. But as a reviewer, sometimes I have to say maybe this isn't aimed at me anymore. It may still be good. It may just not be to my taste. But I think right now we've got a good selection of people involved. So. I'm hoping, fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, I think that was kind of the argument they put forward for, dare I say it, the Star Wars sequel series, where they said sort of very positively, well, this isn't it. This isn't your Star Wars anymore. This is the next generation Star Wars. Get over it. And I think now we can see how that didn't work, perhaps, so well in their favor. But at the same time, I don't really think that this necessarily falls into that category. I think it's very possible for them to make something that will appeal sort of to both. And as somebody who's shown their eldest two children the original, it would be nice for another generation to experience the Highlander story, without kind of chuckling at it, at the kind of the hilarious 80s-ness of it.
And there are good films. I mean, I don't know who else has seen The Old Guard since it debuted on Netflix.
Not yet.
A couple of days ago.
I just watched it. Yeah.
Without spoilers, that's the best Highlander movie there's been in some time. It's not Highlander, but you could have made that Highlander with about 5 lines of dialogue change and a slight tweak to the story. Yeah. And it proves I could watch that as a Highlander movie if it had been within a Highlander thing and say it would have been the best movie in years. So it's quite clear there's a huge canvas that you could work on. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And when I saw that, at first it kind of makes me slightly mad that somebody's done that. And I think it was based on a comic book, wasn't it? So it's not like we can moan at the filmmakers. But, they've done a Highlander. Oh, now maybe they've ruined it. Maybe they've blown kind of. But at the same time, no, actually, if that gets people, excited, then that's even more cause for a Highlander movie to kind of to work for today's audiences.
I think what it kind of comes down to, especially you brought up the Star Wars movies, the sequels. Same thing with Star Trek, Doctor Who. Whoever is making or has been given charge of it at the time, I feel needs to make the version of it that they would want to watch and that they love. Yeah. Given, as John said, that they're already a fan of it, but I don't know that they need to be too diehard of a fan. But I think they really need to make the movie that they want to make, as opposed to going, well, we can't do that because this person might be angry or this contingent might be angry. It's like, just make it a good story, make it the movie you want to see, and it will stand on its own. I think, as you pointed out with the Star Wars movies, they should have just done that to begin with the sequels, and not tried to placate fans and give fan service in press releases. It's like, just it should have been like, hey, just give us a chance, see what we do, and if you can only do what you can do, but make the movie you want to make the story, make the Highlander story you want to see, right? So
it's respect the material. I mean, the people I've spoken to over the years have always said that it's easy to say, less easy to do, but you respect the material. If you want to use the name, respect the material, respect the mythology. Yeah. To a point. You can do something totally new, but if you want to do something too new, don't cheat by just using a brand name. We all know examples of things where we've seen things where you go, that's something in name only, and that feels like a cheat. But as long as there's whatever, it's I always go by the 3/4 quotient. If 3/4 of a project is recognizable as the what's gone before, then you can do anything with the other quarter. You really can, or the other third. But if it's more than half different, or in that side, no, that means you're riding on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Highlander could be arguably they kind of maybe did that with The Source. I think to a degree, where there was very little of the original kind of mythology, or the feel, or pretty much anything other than the cast, and there was a part of that, and I think that's probably why that didn't work. I'm sure there are plenty of other reasons as well, but I think one of the reasons that is But that's a whole other episode. We fully plan to cover the source at some point in the very near future. I'm quite looking forward to getting into that, because it's.
I'll explain to you all why it's not a terrible movie, and we can then argue.
I will explain
to you why I've watched it at least 50 times.
And I'll explain to you how even my cameo could not save it.
Well, so no, I definitely agree with John that, I mean, I kind of agree with the 3/4 rule. If you deviate too far from, the basics of what the thing is, then yes, you shouldn't be calling it that. I think Highlander's in a good position because, there was, 4 or 5 movies, that's a couple series, and that's about it. A thing like, if you were, as the people that are making Star Trek are discovering, you have, over 700 hours, almost 800 hours of televised stuff that you have to not contradict or get the feeling of, and that's the difficult thing. But with Highlander, like I said, I think they're in a good position. There is a rich mythology that is not convoluted by 50 years of continuity. So,
absolutely, and it's exciting. The also the other part of it is what it could bring for the future of the franchise as well. It's sort of a reboot will start it afresh, and all of the, especially if they do it so it doesn't end with the prize, it doesn't end, they leave it open-ended. It just fixes all of those issues with continuity that the franchise has been plagued with for 30 plus years. So you've got a nice kind of even kind of story trajectory that you can go off on, and even if it is a movie, that could open it up to a series, and then that could open it up to this and more and more and more.
I mean, it's a little bit like they tried to do with the Star Trek movies, which is say, okay, we have now years of decades of mythology, but we're now not tied to it, because we can say, okay, this is when they did the Kelvin sort of timeline, they can say, oh, we can take this and this and this and say what would have happened if. So you could say, I mean, you look at all the TV series, all the films, there are so many things you could do and do totally differently and cast in a different way. Or say, well, what if we played that out differently? You look at also the Highlander series and the films, you could twist those and come up with a completely different trajectory on it, which might work, might annoy some people, might delight others. But it's a potential.
No, absolutely. And at the end of the day, there will always be people that will be annoyed by whatever happens. People will be annoyed that Adrian Paul wasn't asked to be Ramirez, or that Christopher Lambert wasn't, or that Duncan isn't the lead character and isn't played by Adrian Paul with CG face kind of youngening technology.
I think the only thing that would annoy me is if they used a character like Mythos, and they could cast that in any way, shape, or form. But if they had a character called Mythos that came on and make one quippy line and then somebody takes his head, then I would be turning around saying, well, that's a huge waste of potential.
Yeah.
But I think equally you could cast. Actually quite a few roles you could cast. You could change gender nowadays, and I think that would have been a whole new thing, as long as it was written well. And it's huge potential.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, it's exciting. I think it's very exciting, and I just want to get those Wick movies out of the way, and let's just get the Matrix.
They're not going anywhere. As long as they keep making money, they're going nowhere.
I know. But just come on, just make the reboot already. Like,
if you read between the lines in some of the Stahelski's comments, he might not be directing.
True. There is always that option.
I think one of his quotes was that I'm a big fan of Marvel movies, but I don't see myself directing one. He's a big fan of Highlander. Maybe he's helping this world build this world. But he's not going to personally take the reins.
Yeah. Well, he does work very closely as part of a team, doesn't he, with his kind of the other people that he works with. So no, absolutely, you could be right. It could be that he can pass it on to somebody else, and if it helps it sort of happen at all, I was going to say sooner than later, but literally at all, would be it'll be great. I have every confidence.
If we can just get COVID out of the way first, then we can. Then everybody can start filming again.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
absolutely. Yeah. And
Well, yeah, that might take some doing.
So what I like to do now is for each of you to pitch your 5-minute pitch for what you would like the reboot to be, the story that you would like to see on screen. You will have exactly 5 minutes. I will time it on my watch. And if you get close to 5 minutes, you will hear this sound.
Pick up the pace or die, Highlander.
So yes, it's the Guardian, and nobody wants the Guardian on them. So so pick up the pace or die, Highlander. So all right, I am going to go from the top of my screen, which is Rob.
Uh-oh.
Rob, you have 5 minutes to pitch your Highlander reboot, starting now.
Right, okay, right. Here's my idea. We don't. No. I've only got one idea.
Okay.
And it's basically do Highlander, but change it, do the gender thing. Right?
Okay.
John was alluding to it earlier on. You've got a battle. You know it's going somewhere. Conor McLeod or Clan McLeod or whatever, and nothing happens. He doesn't get killed. They win the battle. They go home for a drink in the pub. You know, and the losers turn up later on and start killing people in the village and whatnot. And the wife gets killed. She comes back, and then you've got the gender change.
Right.
But that's all I've got, because the rest of it is just, I don't know, hard to make up. Because the first film was so good, and the series got it pretty damn spectacularly well.
Yeah.
So just do something interesting. I just change it. Don't copy. Just take something and go new. And I've not got any good ideas other than change the gender. That's me.
Well, there you go. I mean, it's a fair point. And I'll go next only because I'm next in, as we see it on the screen, and we're going to go clockwise because that seems to make sense. But there's a similarity in what we're doing there in terms of changing a core element of Highlander, which, and when I say it, I'm not necessarily saying that that's a good thing, but it's something that you could consider. So I'm going to set my own watch here. Feel free to also time me, but I might just kind of like not. Okay. All right. So yeah, similarly, I want to change something, and that is to create a linear story. So no flashbacks. So that said, we would start off with MacLeod entering a modern day area, about to come across he's sort of about to sort of face his final face. And we're not saying at this point whether it's the Gathering or whether it's the last two Immortals, but there is a clear indication that this is a big deal. And so he steps out, and this shadow steps out into the thing, and then we're whisked back to the very beginning. Another core difference is that this guy is not a MacLeod. We're going back even further. This guy is a Viking who is part of the Marauders who come in to, and so Rob is going to be kicking my butt later on history. They're coming in to sack villages and whatnot, and this guy's name is Loud. So he is the progenitor of the MacLeods. So he comes in and does all of this stuff and sacks villages and settles, and but discovers his immortality. We do have a Ramirez. You have to have a Ramirez. It doesn't have to be Ramirez, but we have a mentor who teaches him the ways and teaches him how to defeat all Immortals and and be the best warrior he could be. And then, of course, there is the moment where, you know, McCloud's coming back from the pub to borrow from yours, Rob. And there is a kerfuffle inside his dwelling, and there is lightning and explosions, and he rushes there, and by the time he gets there, it's too late. The shadowy figure has gone. This dark knight who is sort of there at his death, that he's never seen, but he's always just sort of seen in sort of menacing silhouette, goes in there and finds Ramirez like dead. You know, his headless body on the floor, but no head. And it's just, no, Ramirez. And then we sort of shuttle on throughout the ages, and we get the sense of this sort of tortured soul as we do, and sort of the loves and the losses and all of this, but all the while being tortured by this shadowy dark knight who's always there, just pulling the rug out from under him anytime that he feels like life's sort of going his way, and it's but he's fighting as well, and he's getting fed up of fighting, but he's fighting to survive until we finally come to the end. Just checking, I've got a couple of minutes, it's fine. We finally come towards the end, and we're back at the beginning moment. This sort of monumental final fight between Loud and the Dark Knight, and the Dark Knight steps out from the shadows, and it's Ramirez, and he's like, I don't understand, like, and so then he said, but you taught me to defeat every immortal. And I said, yes, I taught you how to defeat every immortal but me. I knew I would have a much better chance of winning the prize if I had somebody else who would help me take out everybody else, but you got no chance of beating me. And so then they have the big swish battle, ching 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 ching. Of course, Loud wins, because he's not going to not win. But that's basically the big sort of twist is that it was Ramirez all along, and that he had basically groomed him to be this amazing fighter, but basically for his own reasons, so that he could win the prize. So effectively, Ramirez is Kurgan, if you look at it in terms of his character. He's just masquerading as a mentor, rather than an evil kind of croaky-voiced villain. So yeah, there you go. That's
nice.
So, Joe, I am
okay.
And on to you. Go.
So I'll preface this that I can neither confirm nor deny if my production company and Rob's production company have spies, because mine might start out similar to Rob's, but in order to set the tone and also to subvert what Highlander fans might be expecting, the movie starts out in the Highlands in 1518. We see this terrifying figure with a bone mask and black robes and an evil face on a horse riding down to a couple, a man and a woman, who are running, and he's yelling after him, "McLeod, McLeod," and he finally catches up to him, and he kills both of them, stabs them through their chests with a sword. We cut to later, quite a while later, the two of them laying there dead, and all of a sudden the woman gasps and wakes up, and you hear this voice off to the side saying, "Hello, McLeod. I am Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez at your service." And he starts teaching her the game, Heather McLeod, the last of the McLeods maybe, starts teaching her the game and explaining that they're immortals, and every once in a while they're compelled to fight, but he doesn't know the reason why. He doesn't understand. No one has figured it out. So we cut to present day. Heather McLeod's still the same age, talking on the phone to Ramirez, who is telling her, I know the immortals have been kind of at an impasse for many years now. Occasional skirmishes here and there, but something's different, something's changed. And off screen, you hear someone croak at him. And he drops the phone and turns, and there's the man that ran down the McLeods from the beginning, and he beheads Ramirez. and there's lightning, there's crashes, there's flashes. He gains the power of Ramirez and says something about, I understand now, the gathering has begun. And so that's our introduction to the movie. That's the premise. And the rest of the movie is basically a cat and mouse game between the Kurgan, who's the bad guy, as we'll discover, and Heather McLeod, leading to their final confrontation. But, in the interest of continuing mythology and starting things off, this is the beginning of the gathering. Somehow the Kurgan did some research and found finally the last piece of the lore that alerted them to that there being some kind of prize, and it would be signaled at some point by all of them starting to fight. So that's how I do it. So you could either go with a TV series after that if you want, if you guys have the money for that, talking to you studio heads, or if we just want to go with a bunch of different movies, we can do that too. So yeah.
Great, love it.
There you go. That's
excellent, nice. Like, everyone's coming in way under. I should have done a 3-minute pitch. This is maybe I'll speed it up for you, John.
John will show us how it's done.
All right, this is great. Okay, John, over to you.
I can totally confirm or deny that I am spies in everybody's camp at this point, because basically I have a mixture of sort of concepts of pieces that come together, and the actual glue and the connective tissue would be something to probably deeper consider later. But it's very much a mixture of what you guys have said and the old guard, which as I mentioned earlier, and I was sat there enjoying and thinking, but that's taken about 4 or 5 of the ideas that I had, and has already been made. I think you've got to have the mixture of the old and the new. I like the idea of starting in contemporary times, maybe on a Middle Eastern battlefield or Iraq or Afghanistan, and you could actually start it in the Highlands of Scotland or whatever, and you come out of that. It's a little bit like The Princess Bride in the sense that you then cut and it's somebody telling the story to somebody, and you realise that it's the same guy that you've just been watching, which is actually him telling a true his past, but telling it as a story to one of the kids that's or one of the fellow soldiers perhaps on the battlefield. And you have a modern day MacLeod who's a soldier. I think that worked very well in the old guard of having it set in a modern contemporary battlefield, and the idea being that perhaps you have characters that are newer that become immortal now that have some battlefield training. It's like the old thing in Buffy that immediately somebody who's a vampire, they suddenly become a master of the martial arts. And I've always thought that is something that that's great, but what the old guard did was explain why you immediately have somebody who has very good battle training. So I like the idea of, at least once you've established some historical precedent, that we set in the story in model times, at least starting in a modern battlefield. I do like the idea of a Ramirez character being female. I think, and we'll probably get to specific casting in a bit, but I think it is one of those characters that you have a massive amount of choice. There's lots of completely diverse actors who could make it their own. But I like the idea of a female Ramirez. I keep the central character, a MacLeod, I think, and a guy, a young man, but I would like the idea of a Ramirez, a female Ramirez, because that way, when we do the flashbacks, and I think flashbacks are important, then I think you can see a way that a female role changes over the years.
Yeah.
So in some ways, I would have 3 characters. I would have the Ramirez character. I would have, in some ways, our central character and a new character that they're training up. Again, the old guard kind of ticked that off a little bit, which was annoying. I like what you guys have said, which I'm immediately going to incorporate into mine. I will homage it, not steal. But I like the idea of a story that has the opportunity to flash backwards and forwards, and perhaps showing us the different ways things are done through the years, not just the gender side of it, but just the way that characters actions change over time. I know that was an aspect of the series that Mythos and Peter Winfield said. Interesting to find a character that the way the morality changes. So we're not quite sure of anybody's agenda. We get these fact there's a bond between Ramirez, McLeod, and the new guy. Unless we make the new guy McLeod, the whole name thing could be swapped there. But you don't quite know what the agendas are and whether they would all be on the same side. The gathering aspect, there has to be a reason that something is happening now. Again, the old guard had this idea that immortals don't just spin up every week, and walk into see Kuvra and go. I like the idea of those immortals not happening very often, maybe once in a generation or something like that. But we find out that one of the people that is the advisor to the president is an immortal. There's a nice bit of misdirection at one point that we might think that the person in the White House, and again, this is not a very political, we're not making any comments about the political side of it, but just the idea that you could have the idea that you think for a little bit that the president might be immortal. And you actually work out about a third of the way into the movie that actually it's his advisor. He is trying to manipulate events on a grander scale. He's realized now it's almost a Mythosian character of manipulating people around him so that he doesn't have to fight. That's the more revelation as you get into the film. You realize that it is actually that guy that's doing it right, who's the kingmaker rather than the king. And the story, again, old guard, curse you. I think the idea of having action on alternating between what we see in war type situations, again, war through the ages is something you can play to. You can have a climax in New York. New York would be good. Silver Cut would be great. But I think a lot of the battles, people don't often walk down the streets with swords and stuff. It makes a nice visual, but I'd almost keep that for the climax on the top of a New York skyscraper. Yeah. So I know I'm speaking close to my time now. But
you're way over, but I'm really into it.
All right. I'm loudly telling time. But it's more like pieces. There's a central story there I would have to work on, but I think you could bring those elements, in particular if it was a miniseries or a series of movies, but bring not the sinister, but the quiet manipulation side of it and the Mythosian side of it with the abject battle sequences that we've seen in some Highlander in the Old Guard, and just marry the two.
Yeah, it's great. I love the idea of, as you say, bringing that kind of Machiavellian kind of scheming into what is generally thought to be just, based on what the head off, and that's me done. Love it. Great. Well, Chad, if you're watching, I think you've got some great ideas here.
Yes.
So in terms of this, what I'd like to do, obviously this is also going to be going up on YouTube, but it'll also be in our Facebook group. So anybody watching, if you want to put down what you think about, there will be hundreds of people with their own ideas as well, I'm sure. But if we can try and keep it down to, let's have a vote. Whose idea you like best? Everyone's going to vote for John's, but let's give it a go anyway. So let's go.
I went last. I stole everybody else. It should be all of the above.
So let's go for number 1 for Rob, number 2 for me, number 3 for Joe, and number 4 for John. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what people think of that. But I think they're all really interesting takes. And as I said, I actually agree that I think flashbacks are very important. I think when and I had actually written most of that as a script about 15 years ago, and then stopped the minute I heard that they were writing a reboot script. And forget that. But I agree that I don't think that necessarily would work as well if it was a linear story. But no, it was an interesting thing to pitch, I guess. So next up, we touched on this a little bit, but cast. I don't think a week goes by when somebody doesn't post on the group their pick for a Connor or a Ramirez or a Kurgan for that matter. It's a very contentious issue. I think a lot of people don't always necessarily take into account the fact that perhaps they need to be sort of slightly on the younger side for longevity of a film franchise, for instance. and that kind of thing. So, but I'll be interested to find out what you guys think. I'm going to go reverse order this time, so I'm going to start with John. Who would you like to cast as your McLeod, your Ramirez, your Kurgan?
I'll start with Ramirez because I was having this conversation with somebody recently, and it was astonishing the amount that when you sort of sit down and you think, who could you cast? And it's such a wide breadth. And we went from Helen Mirren. I know that sounds a bit abstract, but somebody certainly of that sort of mature female side of it, to Patrick Stewart, to Antonio Banderas. It depends how traditional you're going to do it. I mean, I'm not sure how many would work within my concept of it, but within a more general thing, if you were making a general remake, everybody's talked about Antonio Banderas as a great Ramirez, and I think he would be able to do that with his eyes closed and make it really good.
Yeah.
Patrick Stewart, I can absolutely, somebody said that, and I instantly went, oh my God, I can absolutely see every scene that him doing that, and he'd be brilliant. Helen Mirren might not be, but I understood the absolute, like, anything Helen Mirren and it is in, I will go and see. If Charlize Theron hadn't been in the old guard, absolutely, I would turn up for Charlize Theron opening an envelope, and she consistently proves herself in movies as somebody who can handle the action and the emotional side of it. Duncan, Connor. I've had a real problem with this one because it's always flavor of the month, or it's Thomas Jane. And it's just like Thomas Jane 10 years ago. Yeah. If you wanted to go with somebody who was the spitting image of Christopher Lambert at the same age, perfect. But I don't think looking like the previous character is anywhere near essential. In fact, I think it's detrimental most of the time. He's a good actor. I'm sure he could handle it. But if he was cast to be a clone of, Christopher Lambert, that's pretty much the only thing. Yeah. So I don't know. I would like to think it would be somebody relatively unknown. Somebody with a lot of charisma, maybe who'd done one or two movies, not necessarily even action movies, but somebody who'd proven they could carry something. And I was trying to, I can't come up with a singular name, but it would have to be, I think, somebody that I didn't go, oh yeah, I'm going to go see their massive back catalogue. It would have to be somebody who just had that charisma, where you might see a movie that had nothing like Highlander, and you go, I couldn't take my eyes off that. That was he wasn't supposed to be the star, but he was really good. Yeah. That's the kind of person it should go to. Yeah. Villain-wise, you could go, the traditional route of like Dave Bautista or something like that. I would love somebody with the presence of somebody like Christopher Walken, who is probably too older now to do stuff for the kind of like a kingmaker type of thing. If it was less action but more manipulative and Machiavellian, but again, it depends which way you're going to do it. Dave Bautista, was somebody who was seriously linked at one point, I think, even if it was just gossip for a long time. And I can see the physicality side of it. Part of me would like to see Clancy Brown because he could still do it. He could say, just face wise, you could do that. But yeah, it's one of those times when I think you could swap the gender of a lot of people and make it just as interesting, as long as it wasn't just a stunt. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, we're going to have a female. It would be like, yeah, somebody think about that and think about the possibilities and say that's a slightly different story we could tell. Yeah, it would end. It would give some pathos to some of the flashbacks. And you can cast across race as well. There's no reason you couldn't have there's a whole range of black actors out there and ethnic minorities who I'm sure would be perfect for it. It's interesting how you would do it, particularly if you're viewing it through the lens of different time periods. So I don't know, and I've gone over my 5 minutes again.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. So Joe, what do you think?
I'll start off again with just like John. I'll start off with Ramirez. and I'm going to completely butcher the actor's name. I'm horrible at names, but my pick for Ramirez would be Navid Negahban, I believe is how his last name is spelled. He played Farouk in the TV series Legion, and was just fantastic in that. I mean, he plays the manipulator and the kind of the coy person, you're not sure if he's good guy, bad guy, perfectly. And I think he would just be unbelievable as Ramirez. Plus, he kind of gives he was good at giving the, you know, impression that he was, you know, eons old and of unknown age, but yet also kind of young. So I think he would just be brilliant as Ramirez. I would like to see that. I'll go with Kurgan next because I have two folks in mind for Kurgan that would work. Either you go the obvious route and go with Idris Elba, because he would have the voice and the gravitas to play kind of maybe not as over the top as Clancy Brown did, but then again, I don't know, considering some episodes of Luther, he could probably pull that off. But I think he would just bring this really quiet benevolence to the role that would be impressive. That, or another obvious to me route would be Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I say that because not only does he have kind of the bulk and size and the voice to be menacing and impressive, but I don't know if you know who's kept up with his acting career, but the last few years he's done some roles where his acting chops are phenomenal in my opinion. I think he's become an exceptional actor and could pull off the bad guy role exceptionally well. For Connor, obviously in my version, it's going to be a female. Connor will be a female. So I would say either go with like Natalie Dormer or Carey Mulligan, mainly because, well, they're both fantastic actors, but you also want someone kind of in that age group that, as you pointed out earlier, if you're going to make a series of films or even a long form, you know, serial, you want an actor who's not going to age much over the next few years, because, you know, their character doesn't age and has to be shown at various points in time. So you want someone who is youthful. You probably don't want to go too young because as the wonderful Stan Kirsch showed us, you do age at a young age, and it shows up over the course of many episodes. But you don't want to go too old either. I would definitely adjust Connor's age because you know, according to the time frame, Connor should be 18, and Lambert didn't even look 18 in the first movie. So I would adjust the age slightly to match the age of the actor or actress that you cast in the role. But yeah, I would go with someone in that age group. So yeah, those would be my picks.
Nice, fantastic. How about you, Rob?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm with John, a bit more traditional. Like, we all talked about Antonio Banderas back in the day as Ramirez, after Zorro and all that kind of stuff, and Anthony Hopkins did the mentor thing. I like that idea still, because he's getting to an age where he can play that, I think. So I've not got any other ideas about that. But Ramirez just Antonio Banderas. The Kurgan, I always thought Joe Manganiello. He's a really big guy. He's got a gruff voice. He's got all the hallmarks of, you know, big, and you can't beat this guy, you know. So I think he'd be great. For the main role, it all depends on when they make this thing, and how they make it. If they go with a female or go with a male. At the end of the day, the Connor role isn't as important as the other roles, because films are more entertaining. You think of Batman and Jack Nicholson's villain, and Heath Ledger's villain. The villains always get the good stuff. The good guys generally don't. So I'm for just pick somebody that's unknown, can either is Scottish or can do a really good Scottish accent, and has got some kind of personality. That's it.
Yeah.
And the rest of it, you hang on the performances of everybody else.
Yeah.
To make it more interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there is an argument for what Johnny said about having, you know, I think it was John, about potentially an unknown. I can't remember who said that, to play Connor. So I'll start with Connor because I'm very much in the John camp, where I struggle to find somebody who personifies Connor for me, who has that sort of intensity and that kind of just the pain behind the eyes of someone who's lived for so long and had to
do. Kempster.
Oh yeah.
You've got my vote. You've got my vote. Grant Kempster.
Yes.
I'm available.
I vote too. Yeah. Vote early, vote often. Yes, Grant.
If only Grant had the looks to pull it off.
Oh,
wow.
Unfortunately, I'm far too old and craggy now. But bless you all. One name I did quite like, and I don't know if anybody caught. I did a fake trailer for the reboot a little while ago with Charlie Hunnam as Connor. Yeah. And I'll stick a little bit of that up now in post. So I thought he was an interesting an actor to choose. Because he'd done a lot of period pieces, and it was really easy to use him for a teaser trailer. But actually looking at his performances and things, his look suited the different ages so well, and he's quite a charismatic actor. So I could go for him, or I could go for Stephen Amell. If you wanted to go down that action route of somebody capable with a sword, capable with action, and able to emote quite well on camera, and be a sort of a likable character. I'm not saying I think he's the perfect person for the role, but I think he is a potential if you wanted to go down that route. Ramirez is, I'm going to sound like a broken record, it's Antonio Banderas. And I hadn't really ever thought that before I saw him in Dr. Dolittle. And the minute I saw, I don't know if anybody else has seen that, but Robert Downey Jr.'s one. The minute I saw the minute he popped up in that, I was like, it's Ramirez. I mean, apart from the fact he looked the part, but he's so charismatic, like he oozes just character, and you could just see him in that role now, more so than 15 years ago when people were touting him then. You know, he would be, in my mind, absolutely perfect for that role. And the Kurgan, I get where you're coming from with some of your options, but I would like to maybe see someone like Tom Hardy do it, because I would like to subvert the idea of him being this monster of a man, and just have somebody who again has that sort of intensity and, you know, potential kind of like craziness, but in a more diminutive stature.
Absolute Tom Hardy, I think would absolutely be. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Perfect.
Yeah, I think it's again in terms of subverting, I think, you know, that could be cool. So yeah, that's sort of my picks, but who knows? You know, who knows what'll happen.
Hardy could be Connor.
He could, and I did think that.
Older,
I wonder if he's maybe a little old now. I don't know. I think there is that sweet spot between, so maybe like mid to late 20s to very early 30s, where people don't visually age as much.
Right.
For a good while. At least you could get around it with makeup and things like that. Where you've sort of hit the point where you look like you're going to look for a while, and that. So yeah, it's interesting. Well, look, we're going to wrap this up, guys. Thank you so much, John, for joining us on our first foray into this this kind of sort of show that we're doing. Really appreciate you coming. It's been fab to see you. And thanks to my two cohorts as well. Joe, brilliant to see you again.
Oh, you too.
And we'll catch you on the next one. And Rob too, my brother from another mother. Good to see you too.
Good night.
Back in the day when I used to write the fanzine a gazillion years ago, I would always sign off at the end with a little ditty, which was "Hold fast and don't lose your head," and that was all to do with the actual Clown McCloud motto, which was "Hold fast," and of course the Highlander aspect, which is "Don't lose your head." So we're just going to do that YouTube thing where you do a little sign off, like and subscribe. Just throw that in there because that's what you have to do. And John, I'm gonna roll it over to you and ask you to see us out.
Yeah, absolutely. This is John Mosby on Highlander Heart, and remember, hold fast and don't lose your head.